Yeah.
You mentioned, anabolics, like around what year did you start getting involved with them? And then how did you even I would imagine like years and years ago, it's probably harder to find out information on them.
Yeah. So I did my first bodybuilding contest when I was 18 and, started living the dream, right? I'm going to be a bodybuilder, blah, blah, blah. I got out of the Air Force, came back home, and I was training, natural competing, doing okay. But I always knew that I wanted to look like those guys, like the guys in the magazine. I wasn't going to get there. Continue to train, research. Muscle Media 3000 was real big back then. So I was starting to get some information. I went to the Las Vegas meetup that they had one year, and you got to sit at a round table with Dan Duchaine, with Charles Poliquin, with Bill Phillips, with Sean Phillips. And I had pieced enough together by then to kind of get an idea what I wanted to do, what I was going to look for, how I was going to test. I started doing blood tests from the very beginning. And this is, this is like 90 something, 96, 97.
Right.
Anyway, so I got to talk to Dan Duchaine, and, I had a list of questions, and, it was hilarious. Cross all that shit out, take that and that, and you'll get big. Okay, when do I stop? And I remember him saying, stop. You're like, cycle off? I go, yeah. It's when you get sick and you can't do it anymore, then you're done. Okay, man. And so right after that,
what would you stop for?
I know, right? And it served me well. Once I started, I never stopped. I never went off. But I had
higher
enough
doses and lower doses.
That's right. Change of compounds. But when I was 27, I had enough information. I felt comfortable. Buddies and I took a trip down to Mexico, got blood work done. I determined that, I had some kind of a baseline to go on. And then I started systematically taking compounds by themselves, kind of seeing how it made my body feel, how I reacted to it. About a year later, then I started combining and going full blast. And I was topping out about 235, 240 on stage. I'm natural
big,
and in pretty decent contest shape, but in natural contest, it's by height. So I'm standing next to a guy that's like 5'9" and, getting blown away. Anyway, then I worked my way up to my last contest. I was 275 on stage.
Wow.
Still 30 pounds short of being what I would consider competitive at nationals. And that was my max.
Wow. Yeah. Dan Duchaine, just so people know, he wrote the book Body Opus. And then I believe he partially wrote the Underground Steroid Handbook, I think, right?
I think that's right.
He was part of that
Underground newsletter.
Yeah, he was part of that. Yeah, and he had an Underground newsletter. And his whole mission was to give out information so people wouldn't get hurt. And so I think people misunderstood. He was giving out a lot of information on steroids and how to use them and how to inject. I mean, he would give you like every detail he could imagine. This is before the internet. This is before there was forums. This is before you could, before Bigger, Stronger, Faster, which is my brother's film. Like it's before this stuff was like more out in the open. It's before, doctors were prescribing it and a lot of these things. And so Dan Duchaine did a huge service to everybody by explaining like, hey, look, this is how it was going. Because a lot of guys were getting sick. People were like sharing needles and all kinds of weird, crazy stuff was going on.
Yeah, it was, there were some crazy stories out there, man, for sure. But he was, when the internet first started, he was one of the guys that, was on boards that you could get to and get information from. And it was amazing. You never knew you found out later who it was. But he was a really cool guy, man. I was fortunate enough to have some interactions with him after the Las Vegas meet, and just always a real interesting, cool dude, man.
He was one of those people that really broke down, how a lot of these supplements were made. And then he really studied a lot of the kind of chemical side of things, I guess, in terms of like PEDs. And in his book, though, he actually talked a lot about like the future. And he was like, there's going to be stuff around the corner that will come and maybe even better than steroids. Have you seen anything yet that compares when it comes to performance enhancing drugs? Is there like, what about like SARMs, or what about we have these peptides and things like that, and growth hormone and stuff along those lines?
So my opinion, SARMs are a complete waste. If you're going to do SARMs, you might as well do anabolics. At least we know what's going to happen. I know that may be a unpopular opinion, but I haven't had any real use for them. Had a lot of people try them out.
You've tried them yourself?
I've tried them.
Yeah.
And with clients like guys who don't want to jump on, but want to do something, just get a much cleaner, more predictable, better result just using anabolics. As far as peptides, I've experimented with a lot of those. Started with TB4 at real high doses. The only thing that I'll use consistently is like melanotannin, because I'm super white and I live in Florida.
Right. Keep you dark.
Yep. So that helps. But as far as the growth hormone releasing peptides and stuff, if I'm injecting myself 5-7 times a day, I could equate that to roughly about a 2 IU dose of growth hormone. I'll just do growth hormone.
So you have to administer it a lot, and that's kind of the flaw.
My experience was, I'm doing it a lot, and I don't mind taking shots, but when you're out like 5-6 a day.
What about TB 400? Isn't that something that can help with injuries?
Yep. So when I first started using that, I had started my medical device career where I was standing in the OR, sometimes 18 hours, watching surgery or standing there on a hard surface. And so I still weighed, 285, 290, and my body started to fucking hurt, man. Had body aches all over. I'm certainly not going to hit NSAIDs for that. So I looked into TB4, started doing that at real high dose, and had good experience with it. Overall inflammation and pain seemed to be reduced. And then I got onto curcumin after that. So I tried injectable curcumin at high dose and found that just oral at a certain dose matched what I was injecting, and so kind of switched off with curcumin for that.
What is curcumin, by the way? I'm just listening.
It's turmeric. It's a spice basically, and curcumin is the active ingredient in turmeric. And Dante just did a real good job on Instagram of breaking down why he recommends curcumin, why he had us pushing for it back in the day. Does a lot of beneficial things for you, but one thing it does is it really knocks down inflammation. And for me, that's probably the main benefit why I've stayed on it. TB4 is real interesting though, because if you have an acute injury, like the last time I had my pec, I have scar tissue in my pec minor that every now and then pulls away, get a little bruising. I used to treat that with TB4, seemed to be effective, but BP 157 seems to be a little bit more effective for acute on site. And so I have better luck with that,
and these things they're not illegal, right?
Yeah. Kind of gray.
The gray area. I mean, you can order them on, I guess because you can order them online doesn't mean they're not illegal, but
right.
They're like, I guess you can order them and they're not a scheduled drug. It was my understanding.
Right.
It just says not for human use on them, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Some of the companies got in trouble. There's been busts on that, and I'm not sure because if the wording was correct for human usage or how they sold it, but yeah, it's one of those kind of gray market areas. But a lot of the anti-aging physicians and more forward-thinking physicians, especially in the TRT space, are prescribing or writing scripts for some of the peptides now, and there's compounding pharmacies that will fulfill those, and so you get more of a maybe human grade, or it's not put together in a guy's bathtub or something.
You started training when you were, or didn't start training, but you said you started using when you were 27,
Yep.
right? So you already had 14 years of training in. And I know that a lot of young guys come to you, maybe they're like 18, 19, and they're trying to figure out, should I start, should I not? What's your advice to guys like that? Like, do you have like a general, you should be training for this long, and then if you feel that you want to do this, then maybe it's a good idea?
Yeah, I think that one, the older you are, the better chance that you're going to have to survive it. The guys that I've seen start really, really young, whether they had a genetic predisposition for cardiovascular disease or whatever, the guys who started really young and hit it hard and stayed on it, just in my experience, man, had a bad result later on in life. And I don't know,
like health-wise?
Yeah, health-wise. And again, one of the things that I try to talk to somebody about, if they're going to do that, is you really have to determine your risk. And that's genetic predisposition. Do you have cardiac, disease history in your family? Taking blood work, seeing what your risk is, kind of weighing that out before you do it. So all that said, I think that the longer that you train and the more familiar you are with your body, the more able you are to go in and do a workout, and you've taken your body to extremes, you've dieted, you know how to put on muscle, you know how to lift, you know how to recovery. Then you add anabolics and you get a really good result out of that as compared to not.